Friday, the 13th. So far, so good. I do recommend to all, no matter what your political leanings, to catch some of the videotape from the protests in London. They're unlike anywhere else in the world, where points are made with this excruciating politeness and humor. And it's, no matter where you stand on anything, it's worth doing. All week long, the news flow out of Europe about NATO and the UK and Brexit and Trump and so on, and markets paid no attention at all, nor should they. And good theater, but no economic content. Running in the background is the tariff business. And even Congress woke up briefly. The Senate voted 88-11 and the House unanimously to advise Trump not to misuse his tariff authority, which was given to him in 1962 as a Cold War measure and for national security reasons only. And so the tariff back and forth goes on. Canada and Europe, apparently national security threats. Everybody knows that the tariffs are going to have some effect on international commerce, and the economy's involved, but nobody has a handle on trying to quantify the effect on the actual economy, and in part because nobody knows how far this goes. China is the big piece on the chessboard, and its economy is, I mean, it's not failing, but it's not in great shape either, and it's completely preoccupied by trying to get off the debt binge that it's been on for a long time. And this is debt of all kinds. I mean, everything from households to municipalities to the government itself to state-owned banks making unwise loans and on. And you can't pull back from a debt binge like that without slowing your economy, and the collateral effects are beginning to appear in some strange places. There is a domestic China flight to quality in its own bonds, which is money that ordinarily would enter that economy for stimulus is instead going to safety. The Chinese yuan, also for domestic economic worry, is rising in value, while the People's Bank of China is trying to push its value down, not to devalue it, but just to hold it where it is. The radicals in the White House think that enough pressure on China will cause China to concede important things on trade. I mean, I can't imagine that that's the case, but there are all kinds of things that happen that I can't imagine. But I really can't imagine this one. There's too much at stake for China, its people, its leadership, and especially Xi Jinping. So we just watch. Now, while all of this has been running, since February, long-term interest rates have been the same. Since, if we unwind all the way back to April, the most Fed-sensitive security is the 2-year Treasury note, and it's been frozen since. Nothing moving, and yet the Fed very consistently saying, we're coming. There's another quarter point from the Fed in September. The Fed will then go to complete silence until the election is over with, but then resume. And the Fed sees itself as still in the process of normalizing and has no reason to stop unless the economy suddenly departs the growth path that it's on, and there isn't any sign of that in any of the data. So there's a disconnect between the market and the Fed, and these disconnects are usually resolved in an unpleasant moment for markets, and we're set up for that. Next week, Chair Powell testifies to Congress. Chair Powell is the first Fed chairman since Doomsday to be not an economist. He is fully trained. He's worked in financial markets and economics for his whole working life, but he doesn't speak in the jargon of economists use to camouflage his intentions. He is direct and frequently blunt, not unkind, but just blunt. His testimony to Congress is going to be different next week. Powell was trained by Jesuits, and if you have any friends who have been through that sort of training, it alters the mind for life and in the direction of directness. If Powell makes it clear next week on camera, while everybody else is just addled with the rest of the political news flow, I think I would want to have my interest rate locked rather than to fiddle around with this market and hope that it gets better. Do have a good summer weekend. The summertime silly season awaits, and I will do my best to rise to the occasion.